The new championship season is upon us. A competition in which 24 teams slog it out, spending wildly beyond their means, incurring massive losses and huge debts as a result, and some of them putting their very existence at risk, all in the hope of winning promotion to a league where they will invariably lose almost every week and come straight back down as miserable failures. And in England, this is what we call the best league in the world. We are a nation of eccentrics. Whilst the Championship is often described as being endlessly chaotic and unpredictable, and it may seem that way if you compare it only with the Premier League, the reality is that English football's second tier has become almost as formulaic as the division above it over recent years. The clubs in receipt of wildly distorting parachute payments tend to do very well, occupying at least 2, if not all 3 of the promotion places each season. The non-parachute clubs that refuse to spend more than 100% of their revenue on wages go down, and Bristol City and Preston North End will be there for it all, every single season. They are stuck here forever. Oh, and whatever happens, good, bad, or mediocre, you can guarantee that Hull City and Watford will sack their managers. Heading into the 2025-26 season, perhaps the biggest question on everyone's lips, outside of how many points Leicester will be deducted and whether or not Sheffield Wednesday will exist by the end of it, is can anyone stop Ipswich Town? The Tractor Boys won 96 points in the Championship the season before last. They have undoubtedly strengthened since then, and they have retained the services of arguably the best manager in the division. It's little wonder, therefore, that Ipswich are both promotion and title favourites, and that is before their summer recruitment is even done and dusted. Kieran McKenna's side have spent less than £8 million of the £13 million club record fee that they receive for starman Liam Delap, who spent just a single season at Portman Road. Ipswich are therefore widely expected to flex their financial muscles and make a couple of key additions before the window closes, despite the fact that they've already signed players who had Premier League interest from the likes of Sunderland and Liverpool. It begs the question, forget about just this season, could this be the greatest Championship team of all time? Well, it's a good question, so well done to you on that front, and you have come to the right place, since I am going to attempt to answer it. So sit back, relax, and join me on a journey to Suffolk, a county that has been shaped by farming, as we take a look at whether Kieran McKenna has cultivated the best team in Championship history, what could blight their current crop of players, and the rest of the field in terms of the competition to be crowned as the greatest Championship team of all time. Ipswich were surprise packages in some respects the last time that they were in the Championship. League One runners-up the previous term, behind Plymouth Argyle, though there was a sneaking suspicion that they were a rising force under Kieran McKenna, few people anticipated them to win back-to-back promotions. Not since Southampton over a decade earlier had a team done that, and, as alluded to in the introduction, the Championship has become much more uneven since then. The 3 relegated clubs, Leicester, Leeds and Southampton, were among the most formidable relegated trios of all time, if not the most formidable, and no one outside of Ipswich came remotely close to competing with them. West Brom, who finished 5th, trailed Southampton by 12 points and Leicester by over 20. Nonetheless, Ipswich, whose myriad of supposedly inevitable drop-offs were seemingly predicted by a different source every weekend, amassed an enormous 96 points, pipping both Leeds and Southampton to automatic promotion, and only missing out on the league title to Leicester by a single point. To put that achievement in some perspective, Ipswich's wage bill of £29 million before promotion bonuses was about a third of the size of either Leeds or Southampton's, and even with their promotion bonuses, it wasn't even close to being half the size of Leicester's. This season, by contrast, Ipswich won't be the underdogs or be able to benefit from flying under the radar. Quite the opposite, in fact. The Tractor Boys significantly strengthened last season, bringing in proven top-class Championship players like Jacob Greaves, Jayden Philogene, Jack Clark, Dar O'Shea, Sammy Smodics, and Chidozie Ogbene, all of whom are still at the club. Ipswich's only major departure this summer, Liam Delap, wasn't at the club when they were last in the Championship, and they turned between a £10 to £15 million profit on him in the space of just 12 months. George Hurst, Connor Chaplin and Nathan Broadhead are all still at the club, as is Ali Al-Hamadi, albeit the last two have been linked with moves away from Portman Road, with Broadhead subject to a reported £7.5 million bid from Wrexham at the time of recording. Sammy Smodics, meanwhile, was the Championship's top scorer when Ipswich won promotion, despite then playing for a team that finished 19th, only 3 points above the relegation zone, in which he scored 27 league goals and 33 goals in all competitions. Between them, Hurst, Chaplin, Smodics, Clark and Philogene scored 74 goals in their last season playing in the Championship, which was only the season before last, or an average of 17 goals apiece. That's more than every club barring Leeds scored in the Championship in total last season, courtesy of just 5 players, before you factor in Chidozie Ogbene, who scored 8 in a struggling Rotherham United side, and Amari Hutchinson, who scored 10 for Ipswich themselves, the latter of whom is still at Portman Road, despite having been linked with the move elsewhere. Even if Ipswich lose both Broadhead and Hutchinson, as many anticipate at the time of recording, they look likely to replace them with a player of real calibre. The leading candidate at the time of recording, and this is a very fast-moving transfer saga it should be said, is Ajax forward Chuba Akpom. Targeted by Birmingham City, who are in search of a replacement for Alfie May to partner Jay Stansfield and the former Celtic striker Kyogo up front, the Blues thought that they'd got their man and had agreed a loan deal with a view to a permanent for Akpom only last week. Ipswich subsequently swooped in, having turned their attention to Akpom from the likes of Richard Kone and Ollie McBurney, with Akpom reportedly favouring a move to recently relegated Ipswich over newly promoted Birmingham. Undeterred, Birmingham launched a new and improved offer for Akpom, offering to sign him from Ajax on a permanent basis. Birmingham's new bid was favoured by Ajax themselves, owing to the structuring of the deal with an upfront payment worth somewhere in the region of £6 million, but Akpom's head had been turned. As such, and again, at the time of recording, this is a live situation, it's widely reported that Birmingham have dropped their interest, with Akpom looking to force through a move to Portman Road, where one suspects he will be their starting number 9 next season. Akpom, like Smodics, was the top scorer in his last season in the Championship, scoring 28 goals in a Middlesbrough team that made the playoffs, which saw him named as both the PFA Championship Players Player of the Year and the Championship Player of the Season, preceding a more than £10 million move to Ajax. It would take the number of goals at Ipswich's forward line, in terms of each player's last season in the Championship, to well in excess of 100 goals. For context, the only team to score more than 100 goals in a Championship season was Manchester City over 2 decades ago, in the 2001-02 season, Man City's last in the second tier, in which they scored a record-breaking 108 goals. I don't think that it is especially likely that Ipswich will exceed that. As I said, no one has for over 20 years, but arguably no team has ever been better equipped to do so. In the wide areas, even if Ipswich do lose Amari Hutchinson, Jayden Philogene and Jack Clark are arguably, and I say arguably before anyone gets upset in the comments, the 2 best wingers in the Championship, both capable of looking totally out of place in the second tier, as they did at Sunderland and Hull. Clark stood out a mile at Sunderland the season before last, in which he either scored or assisted over 36% of their goals from the left wing, despite missing 6 matches. Meanwhile, Philogene was literally the most productive player in the entire division, before getting injured and being moved out of position at Hull, in order to make way for Anas Zaroury. Don't make me get into it. Whilst also being just about the most fun, flamboyant, and entertaining player in the division. Neither Clark nor Philogene's Premier League returns worked out, for a variety of reasons, but if either of them can return to anything like their best, or even beyond age 23 and 24, no team in the Championship can live with them. The only caveat or qualifier that I would add to that is that both of their best positions, by far, is on the left wing, but only one of them obviously can play there. Both have played plenty of football on the right, and maybe rotating them throughout games could bamboozle opponents and fullbacks, but you lose a lot when either of them are forced onto the right, leaving them unable to cut inside onto their more favoured right foot, where they are capable of splitting teams open, creating something out of nothing, and scoring from range. Nonetheless, there are certainly worse problems to have, and Ipswich also have the raw speed and directness of Chidozie Ogbene, who does prefer to play and is more effective on the right. In the middle of the park, Ipswich still have Wes Burns, who was outstanding in both of their promotion seasons, Jack Taylor, who was a regular fixture in both the Championship and in the Premier League, and 21-year-old Cameron Humphreys, who was excellent on loan in League One with Wycombe Wanderers last season. They have added to that courtesy of Azor Matasiwa, who was brought in this summer for a reported €9 million from Rennes, rising to €11.5 million, subject to add-ons. A midfield destroyer who is surprisingly progressive in terms of his passing and urgency to get the ball into the feet of his team's forwards, Matasiwa has earned comparisons with the likes of Moises Caicedo and N'Golo Kante. Linked with Premier League title winners Liverpool only last January, Matasiwa ranked in the 81st to 87th percentiles in terms of tackles, interceptions and clearances among players in his position in Europe's Big Five leagues last season. Convincing him to drop down to the Championship, therefore, looks to be a real coup for Ipswich, who arguably lacked a little bit of bite in midfield last season, and certainly would have done this season without Matasiwa, in light of Sam Morsey's contract expiring and his move to Q8. Ipswich are also widely expected to bolster their midfield ranks further before the transfer window slams shut. It's always slammed shut, the transfer window, isn't it? It's never just gently closed. It must be a door in the house of an arguing couple stuck in an unhappy marriage. Anyway, the two leading candidates to join Ipswich in midfield are Napoli's Jons Cajuste, who impressed on loan at Portman Road in the Premier League last season and has already turned down a summer move to Saudi Arabia, and highly sought-after Middlesbrough star Hayden Hackney. Ipswich reportedly agreed a fee of more than £20 million for Hackney over a week ago, signalling both their ambition and resources in what would make him the most expensive signing ever made by a Championship club. Unfortunately for the Tractor Boys, they have thus far been unable to agree personal terms with Hackney, with reports that the 23-year-old has turned them down, which might have something to do with reported Premier League interest, courtesy of Everton. Cajuste seems more likely, therefore, and a midfield of Matasiwa and Cajuste, with either Smodics or Chaplin as the number 10, is, once again, just about the best in the Championship. At fullback, Ipswich have retained the services of Leif Davis, who made 21 assists in his last season in the Championship, at a time when he was being talked about as a potential future England international. Meanwhile, Ben Johnson ought to flourish and grow in confidence in his first season outside of the Premier League at the age of 25. If those two are to be the regular starters, Kieran McKenna will still benefit from the immense experience and the rare luxury of being able to rotate them with a Premier League and Serie A title winner in Ashley Young, who, though aged 40 now, you'd hardly call him a prospect, still made 32 appearances in the Premier League for an Everton team that comfortably survived last season. News that Connor Townsend suffered an ACL injury in Ipswich's final pre-season friendly against Auxerre has depleted Kieran McKenna's ranks somewhat, but Jacob Greaves is more than capable of covering at left-back, a position where he spent practically an entire season at Hull, should both Davis and Young ever be sidelined, or McKenna feel as though a more defensive-minded and aerially dominant left-back is ever required. Speaking of Greaves, Ipswich also have an embarrassment of riches at centre-back. Dar O'Shea, recently appointed as Ipswich's new club captain, has started over 60 Premier League games over the last two seasons, and was superb for West Brom in the Championship before that, still aged only 26. Greaves, likewise, was one of the best centre-backs in the Championship at Hull, making the division's team of the season, and is still aged only 24. The pair of them cost Ipswich in excess of £30 million, but don't look to be going anywhere this window, with Luke Wolfenden, who was also brilliant in the Championship and is still only 26, still there to provide depth, and Cedric Kipre, brought in on loan from Stade de Rome. A former standout at West Brom in the Championship, alongside O'Shea incidentally, Kipre was reportedly sought after by Sunderland over the summer, but Ipswich were able to convince him to join them from Ligue 1 instead. With Kipre and Wolfenden both standing at over 6'4", or at least 6'4", Greaves being one of the Championship's most aerially dominant defenders, and O'Shea rarely wants to shirk a challenge, Ipswich's backline could look like Land of the Giants at times. It is packed with talent and experience at good ages, and, yet again, Kieran McKenna should have the luxury of being able to rotate. And lastly, in goal, Alex Palmer, who played 12 games in the Premier League last season following his mid-season move from West Brom, is expected to be Ipswich's number one, with Arjen Muritz expected to depart before the window closes. Capped 43 times by Kosovo, Muritz impressed when Burnley won the championship under Vincent Kompany, but he was a big part of Ipswich's leaky backline before being dropped last season, and though a return to the championship sometimes sees players turn around their fortunes, it feels like there might be too much baggage for Muritz to overcome at Portman Road. Perhaps a season out on loan will provide the necessary water under the bridge, since Ipswich still have three very capable deputies in Christian Walton, Kieran Slicker, and David Button, who is, of course, the brother of the retired F1 driver Jenson Button. In totality, in terms of both Ipswich's starting 11 and squad, assuming they get a couple of crucial signings over the line, and there is really no reason to think that they won't, it is just a ridiculously strong group of players at championship level, which is certainly stronger, in my view, than the Leeds and Burnley squads that won 100 points last season, or Ipswich's own squad that won 96 points the season before that, and arguably stronger, again, in my view, than any of the three promoted team squads still, right now, despite some of Leeds, and especially Sunderland's impressive, and eye-catching recent additions. So what are the arguments against Ipswich being the championship's GOATs? Well, the season hasn't even kicked off yet for a start, which you would have to say is the most notable point in the against column, but the championship's GOATs-elect, perhaps I should say. Firstly, there is the fact that Ipswich were abysmal last season. That might sound harsh, and it is a bit, but they won 4 games, drew 10 and lost 24, winning a total of 22 points. We have become somewhat desensitised to room temperature Premier League points tallies in recent years, but that makes Ipswich, purely statistically speaking, still one of the 10 worst Premier League teams of all time. Wolves in the 2011-12 season, by contrast, who were widely regarded as being an all-time dog-turd Premier League team, finished bottom of the league under Terry Connor and ultimately suffered back-to-back relegations to League One under Ståle Solbakken the following season, won 25 points in the Premier League, so 3 more than Ipswich. Then there's the fact that Ipswich didn't even finish 18th last season. They finished 19th, meaning that Leicester City, relegated alongside them, were a better team last season, and they too haven't had many major casualties since the end of last term. In fact, you could argue that they have had fewer than Ipswich. Whereas the Tractor Boys have lost Liam Delap, their star man last season, Leicester have only lost Jamie Vardy, who was 57 years old, Connor Cody, who, according to some reports, actually retired from football in 2022 and has just been a great character to have in the dressing room since then, and a couple of goalkeepers, with the Foxes still boasting 2 excellent keepers in Mads Hermansson and Jakub Stolicek, if the former stays, with Asmir Begovic also having been brought in for added depth. You could make a compelling case, therefore, that Leicester were better than Ipswich last season and have suffered less notable or only equally notable departures since then, in which case, one could argue that not only are Ipswich potentially not the best team that the Championship has ever seen, they might not even be the best team that it sees this season. The counter-argument is that, although Leicester were very narrowly superior to Ipswich last season, at least in terms of points accrued, if not necessarily performance levels, they are nowhere near as stable. Whereas Ipswich have retained their manager of nearly 4 years, Leicester are on their 4th in only 12 months in Martí Cifuentes, who, though he did an impressive job at Queen's Park Rangers, is undoubtedly more of an unknown. The same is true of Leicester's squad. Blessed with immense talent at championship level, though it undoubtedly is, with the likes of James Justin, Wilfred Ndidi, Steffi Mavididi and Abdel Fattawu, there are fewer players, at least in terms of squad depth, who are proven and experienced in the championship. The Foxes lost Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall following promotion, who was a key player for them last time out in the championship, and some of their biggest signings last summer, like Bilal El-Khanous, Caleb Akoli and Michael Golding, have never played championship football before. That is not to say that they won't be a success this season, before anyone cuts this up and puts it on the TikTok to try and make me look like a foolish idiot. I have little doubt that, if he stays, El Canoes, for example, will be superb in the Championship. It is just to say that there are less certainties, whereas in the case of Greaves, Clark, Smodics or Philogene, we know, just as a matter of pure facts, that if they produce their best football, they will be among the best players in the division. And then, most notably of all, there is of course the off-field chaos at Leicester. The Foxes are under a transfer embargo, which is why a 38-year-old on a free transfer constitutes their only summer signing, or as Ashley Young refers to him, a spring chicken. They had debts totalling more than £200 million in their last set of accounts, which was by far the most of any team in the Championship, and they are widely expected to be hit with a points deduction by the EFL for breaching spending regulations this season, and quite possibly a pretty hefty one. Man for man, I don't think that there is a great deal between the Ipswich and Leicester squads, but it is for all of those reasons that Ipswich look like a much safer bet for promotion, and to potentially become one of the greatest Championship teams of all time. For what it's worth, if Leicester are hit with anything less than a 10 or even 12 point deduction, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they still went up. And what that is worth, just to be absolutely clear, is nothing. Other doubts about Ipswich include the Luton Town catastrophe last season. Luton, like Ipswich, won an even less likely promotion and targeted talented Championship recruits ahead of life in the Premier League, presumably with one eye, if not two eyes, on being well equipped for life in the Championship if they were relegated, which, they were. I must admit, I didn't think that Luton would go down last season, or come anywhere close, but I don't think that the situations are especially comparable. Luton only won 80 points the season that they went up, as opposed to Ipswich's 96, and though you could make a case that their signings followed a similar methodology, both the fees and the calibre of player involved were quite different. Luton spent about £22 million in total, which is roughly what Ipswich paid for Jadon Philogene alone, whereas Ipswich forked out over £130 million in the third highest spending season by a newly promoted team of all time. Ipswich's strategy wasn't one of preparing for life back in the Championship, or not primarily at least. It was actually a massive investment in the hope of survival, which just didn't pay off. Whereas Luton's big hitters were the likes of Ryan Giles, Mads Anderson and Tahit Chong, Ipswich's were Philogene, Clark and, though since departed, Delap. In that sense, they are worlds apart. Where the comparison does hold up, or theoretically could hold up at least, is that Luton failed to sufficiently refresh their squad, and, most importantly, change the team's mentality from being one that faced a backs-to-the-walls job every week, and made a habit out of losing, to one that is expected to take the game to the opposition in the Championship, can't just sit back, and is expected to make a habit of winning. The core of the Ipswich squad will be unchanged this season compared to last, as is the manager of course. I think that is cause for some concern, but with an emphasis on the word some. You could also make the case that, due to going back-to-back, even some of the players from Ipswich's promotion season actually have limited Championship experience. It is just that it was limited because they were so good that they won promotion at the first attempt. I don't think that reflects poorly on them, quite obviously, but if you were trying to flesh out every disparaging view of their prospects, which I am, that would be in there somewhere. Much more significant is the risk that Ipswich miss out on key targets like Akpom or Kajust, or both, and lose a couple of key players like Amari Hutchinson, who Ipswich are reported to have rejected a £35 million bid for at the exact time of this recording. I think that's unlikely, the former two that is. Hutchinson may well depart, but if for whatever reason it did happen, Ipswich would still be pretty well endowed in the forward areas, maybe just lacking in a true talismanic focal point to lead their attack, but there would be some concerns in terms of depth in the middle of the park, which is where Ipswich currently appear to be most fragile. They would still have among the strongest midfields in the Championship, to be clear, but it would be a concern if they picked up one or two injuries in that area. And it already is a concern in respect of them being all-time Championship GOATs elect, which I am sure is something that they are very concerned about. And finally, it is worth comparing Ipswich to some of the all-time great Championship teams. In terms of points, no one has surpassed the Reading squad of 2005-06, who amassed a record-breaking 106 points, losing only 2 games all season and winning the league by a whopping 16 points. But whilst Reading had an excellent championship squad, expertly marshalled by Steve Coppell, which formed an unbreakable bond and spirit that season, you would be hard-pushed to say that they had the most talented squad that the Championship has ever seen. In that sense, there are multiple metrics by which one might measure the best ever Championship team. West Ham's squad in the 2003-04 season, for example, boasted the likes of Tomasz Repka, Michael Carrick, Rob Lee, Marlon Harewood, Bobby Zamora, and, for the first half of the season at least, both David James and Jermaine Defoe. That is more talent than there was in the 2005-06 Reading squad just 2 years later, but West Ham didn't even win promotion that season, finishing 4th and losing against Crystal Palace in the playoff final. Sunderland's 1998-99 side amassed the second most points, just 1 fewer than Reading, and possessed a little bit more star power, thanks largely to the strike partnership of Kevin Phillips and Niall Quinn, the first of whom would go on to win the European Golden Shoe the following season after scoring 30 goals in his debut campaign in the Premier League. The Leicester City team of 2013-14 is next, having racked up 102 points, and they were undeniably a fantastic team, boasting the likes of Kasper Schmeichel, Jamie Vardy and Riyad Mahrez, all 3 of whom would play a key role in Leicester's great escape the following season, and a remarkable 5,000-1 Premier League title the season after that. In terms of combining barnstorming results and performances with a star-studded squad, the Championship team that first comes to my mind is always Wolves in 2017-18. Probably the most impressive second-tier team of my lifetime. In my view, Wolves welcomed an influx of outstanding George Mendes clients, including manager Nuno Espirito Santo, and proceeded to dog-walk their way to the Championship title, routinely picking off teams with ease. This was a squad which boasted the likes of Roman Saiz, Ruben Neves, and the late great Diogo Jota, winning 99 points before finishing 7th in the Premier League the following season. Newcastle have also been pretty formidable following both of their recent Premier League relegations in 2009 and 2016, most notably in the 2009-10 season, when they retained the likes of Fabrizio Colaccini, Kevin Nolan and Jonas Gutierrez, bolstered by a prolific forward line which featured the likes of Peter Lovenkrands, Shola Amiobi and a young Andy Carroll, which made mincemeat of the Championship, racking up 102 points, only losing 4 games, and winning the title by more than 10 points in the process. Whether Ipswich will be as or more convincing than them, or more ruthless in terms of amassing points than the likes of Reading and Sunderland teams of bygone eras, still remains to be seen. But the way in which they, Leicester, and, to only a marginally lesser extent Southampton, have retained the core of their Premier League squads, as has become a recurring theme in recent years, only emphasises the decisive role that parachute payments now play in the Championship, and why so many relegated clubs, even those who could barely buy a win in the Premier League, win promotion from the Championship. Burnley, it's just worth remembering, were slaughtered in the Premier League for only winning 24 points, following significant investment, before proceeding to lose a few key players in Wilson Odobert, Sander Berge, and Ipswich's own Dar O'Shea after their relegation. And yet, they won 100 points in the Championship last season, only losing 2 games all season and securing an immediate return to the Premier League. By almost every metric, with the possible exception of defensive discipline, organisation and their goalkeeper, I think this Ipswich team is stronger than Burnley's last season, and likely much stronger once they bring in a couple more big hitters, one of which might even have been confirmed by the time that this video comes out. That doesn't necessarily guarantee anything, this is football after all, and I have almost certainly doomed Ipswich to defeat away at Birmingham in their opening game this season now, for which I can only apologise to their supporters. Birmingham are also a reminder of the fact that I think this is likely to be a fairly significantly stronger Championship than last season, with the addition of Birmingham, Wrexham and, to a lesser extent Charlton from League One, 3 very strong relegated clubs on paper in Ipswich, Leicester and Southampton, along with the likes of Sheffield United, Coventry and Middlesbrough, among others, who will all hope to compete. That will make it more difficult, in my view, to smash through the 100-point barrier and beyond, but if anyone is going to do it, it is likely to be Ipswich. Or maybe they'll go down again like Luton. Who knows? It is the best league in the world, after all, which is endlessly chaotic and unpredictable, where anyone can beat anyone, and where the parachute payment clubs who have Premier League quality players don't tend to beat the non-parachute payment clubs who have Championship quality players 9 times out of 10. Or something like that. Well, that is it for today's... Oh, actually, just to say, David Button isn't actually Jensen Button's brother. That is a long-running nonsensical joke on this channel because I just bloody love banter. What am I like? Neurodivergent, according to my girlfriend, but let's not open up that can of worms. Oh, and I don't actually think that Jamie Vardy is 57 years old before someone inevitably points out that he is 38 in the comments. There's always one. Anyway, that really is it for today's video. Thank you all very much, as ever, for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts, both regarding Ipswich's prospects this season and just about life in general down below in the comments. And of course, make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on. I really cannot emphasize that enough. For both this channel, HITC Sevens, and my second channel, Alfie Potts Armour, both of which should be about to appear on your screen now, along with 2 videos that I can absolutely categorically guarantee you will love watching immediately this second. Yeah. It's a hard sell. You can also support me additionally now, either via the Alfie Potts Armour YouTube channel, where you can become a channel member, or via buymeacoffee.com/Alfie Potts Armour, where you can also become a channel member, but Google won't take almost a third of it. You can also find me on various social media platforms, typically via the username @HITC Sevens, but more important than any of that, I hope that you all have one of the best days of your lives. I will see you next time. Take care up there. I love you. Bye. These outros really do become more deranged by the week, don't they?